The Friday evening rush at the Azure Club was in full swing. Crystal glasses clinked, soft laughter filled the air, and the smell of expensive perfume mixed with freshly prepared steaks. This wasn't just any restaurant. This was where Manhattan's elite came to see and be seen, where a single bottle of wine could cost more than most people's monthly rent. In the middle of all this luxury, Sophia moved quickly between tables, balancing plates, and forcing smiles. Her feet ached in shoes that were a size too small, the only black pair she owned that looked professional enough for this place. She'd been on her feet for 6 hours straight, and her shift wasn't even close to being over. Sophia was 28, but tonight she felt 40. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, carefully hidden under makeup she applied in the staff bathroom. Her uniform was pressed and clean, though she'd worn it 3 days in a row, because laundry cost money she didn't have to spare. Every dollar she earned went straight to the hospital bills that kept piling up on her kitchen counter. The lounge area of the restaurant was her least favorite section. It wasn't just the tables that sat there. It was the piano. A gorgeous Steinway grand, black and shining under the warm lights, sitting there like a beautiful ghost from another life. Most nights, Sophia avoided even looking at it. But sometimes, when the restaurant was quiet and she was wiping down tables, her eyes would drift toward those keys. Her fingers would twitch, remembering. Tonight, though, she had no time for memories. A large party had just been seated in her section, 7 people in suits that probably cost more than her car. The hostess had whispered to her that the man at the head of the table was Richard Thornton, some big shot in the tech world. The kind of person who owned companies she'd never heard of in houses in countries she'd never visit. Sophia approached their table with water glasses and menus, doing her best to look alert and pleasant. "Good evening. Welcome to the Azure Club. Can I start you off with something to drink?" Thornton barely glanced at her. He was mid-conversation, talking loudly about some business deal, gesturing with his hands like he was conducting an orchestra. The others at his table laughed at his jokes right on cue, the way people do when someone has power over their paychecks. She took their drink orders, brought back expensive bottles of wine, recited the specials, and tried to disappear into the background the way good servers are supposed to. But she could feel Thornton watching her when she returned with their appetizers. "You keep looking at that piano," he said suddenly, loud enough that the neighboring tables could hear. "Do you play?" Sophia felt her stomach tighten. "I used to, a long time ago." "Used to?" He grinned, the kind of grin that wasn't really friendly. "Let's hear something then. Come on, play us a song." "I'm working, sir." "I couldn't possibly." "Oh, come on," he interrupted, leaning back in his chair like he owned the place. Which, in a way, people like him did. "I'm sure your manager won't mind. Will you, buddy?" He called out to Vincent, the floor manager, who was hovering nearby. Vincent's smile was tight and uncomfortable. Sophia saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. Keep the billionaire happy, or protect his waitress. It wasn't even a contest. If Mr. Thornton would like some entertainment, I'm sure Sophia would be happy to oblige. Just for a few minutes, Sophia felt heat rising to her face. "I really don't think that's appropriate. I haven't played in years, and I'll make it worth your while," Thornton said, pulling out his wallet. He placed $100 bill on the table, then another, then another. $300 for one song. That's more than you make in a whole shift, right? The other diners at his table were watching now, some looking amused, others uncomfortable. Sophia wanted to refuse, wanted to tell him exactly what he could do with his money. But $300 was $300. That was almost enough to cover this month's prescription costs for her mother. "Sir, I really don't." $500. 2 more bills joined the pile. His eyes glittered with something that looked like challenge. Like he was used to getting what he wanted, and he enjoyed watching people squirm before they gave in. The restaurant had gotten quieter. Other diners were watching now. Sophia felt like an animal in a zoo, something for them all to gawk at. Vincent was nodding at her encouragingly, desperately. The piano sat there waiting, 20 feet away, but feeling like 20 miles. "Fine," she heard herself say, her voice barely above a whisper. One song. The walk to that piano was the longest walk of her life. She could feel every pair of eyes on her back, heard the whispers, the expectant silence. Someone at Thornton's table snickered, probably expecting her to fumble through chopsticks or some simple piece that would confirm she was just a waitress with delusions. Sophia sat down on the bench, and it was like traveling back in time. The smooth wood under her fingers, the perfect height of the seat, the weight of the keys under her hands when she touched them. For a second, she was 13 again, sitting in the conservatory practice room, her whole life spread out before her like a beautiful road she couldn't wait to travel. But she wasn't 13. She was 28, wearing a wrinkled uniform that smelled like kitchen grease, being paid to perform like a trained monkey for a man who saw her as entertainment. The humiliation burned in her chest, hot and bitter. She closed her eyes and took a breath. Her hands were shaking. The room waited, hungry for either beauty or disaster. Thornton leaned back in his chair with that same smug smile, already enjoying his little show. Sophia placed her fingers on the keys and made a decision. If she was going to do this, she wasn't going to play it safe. She wasn't going to give them some simple little piece they could clap politely for and then forget. If this man wanted a performance, she'd give him one he'd never forget. She began to play Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, the piece she'd been preparing 15 years ago, before everything fell apart, the piece she'd never gotten to perform. The first notes filled the room like a whisper, and the world around her disappeared. The moment Sophia's fingers touched those keys, something inside her cracked open. It wasn't just muscle memory. It was everything she'd locked away for 15 years, suddenly flooding back all at once. She was 7 years old again, sitting on a wobbly stool in their tiny apartment in Chinatown. Her father was showing her middle C, his rough hands gentle on hers. He worked 14-hour days at the family laundry, his fingers raw from chemicals and hot water. But when he sat at their second-hand keyboard, those same hands moved like magic. Have you ever had a dream so vivid, so real, that you could almost taste it? For Sophia, that dream was the feel of ivory keys under her fingertips, the swell of a symphony in a grand concert hall. From the moment she first sat at a piano, music wasn't just something she did, it was who she was. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, weaving melodies that told stories of joy, sorrow, and everything in between. Her father, a man with calloused hands from a lifetime of hard work, would listen with tears in his eyes, his heart swelling with pride. He saw her future laid out like a sheet of music. Carnegie Hall, London, Vienna. He scrimped and saved every penny, buying her the best second-hand piano he could find, promising her that one day the world would hear her music. Sophia practiced day and night, her passion a roaring fire. Every competition she entered, she won. Her melodies were not just technically perfect. They were alive, filled with a soul that captivated everyone who listened. The world was her oyster, and the pearl was a grand piano on a world stage. But life, as it often does, had a different score in mind. The year Sophia turned 18, just as acceptance letters from prestigious conservatories started arriving, tragedy struck. Her father, her biggest fan and staunchest supporter, passed away suddenly. The music in their home stopped. The vibrant world Sophia knew turned gray and silent. Her mother, lost in grief, struggled to keep their small family afloat. Sophia's younger brother, Leo, was still in school. The weight of responsibility, heavy and cold, settled on Sophia's young shoulders. Looking at the acceptance letters, once symbols of a brilliant future, she now saw only an impossible indulgence. How could she chase her dream when her family needed her? The piano in the living room, once her closest companion, now seemed to mock her with its silence. With a heavy heart, she packed away her sheet music, sold her beloved piano to pay the mounting bills, and tucked her dream into a forgotten corner of her heart. She took a stable job as an accountant, the neat columns of numbers a stark contrast to the flowing notes of a sonata. The days bled into one another, a monotonous rhythm of debits and credits. She was a good provider, a dutiful daughter and sister. She made sure Leo finished school and her mother was cared for. But the fire inside her had dwindled to a faint, barely there ember. Years went by, 10 to be exact. Sophia was now a respected senior accountant. Her life was stable, predictable, and quiet. She had a small apartment, a few friends, and a routine that kept the silence at bay. She rarely spoke of her past, of the girl who could make a piano sing. It was a locked room in her memory, the key long lost. Sometimes, walking past a music store or hearing a classical piece on the radio would cause a painful twinge in her chest, a ghost of a melody that she would quickly push away. She had made her choice, and she had to live with it. One afternoon, while decluttering her mother's attic, her fingers brushed against a dusty wooden box. She opened it. Inside, nestled amongst old photographs and her father's worn-out work gloves, were her competition medals and faded sheet music. A yellowed newspaper clipping caught her eye. It was a review of her last competition, the headline reading, "A Star is Born. Sophia's music touches the heavens." A single tear traced a path through the dust on her cheek. It was a tear for the girl she had been, for the dream she had buried. The grief and loss, suppressed for a decade, washed over her. That evening, something had shifted inside her. The ember, which she thought had long been extinguished, flickered. On her way home from work, she found herself walking down a street she usually avoided, drawn by a familiar sound. It was the sound of a piano, a beautiful, melancholic Chopin nocturne, drifting from an old community center. Peeking through the window, she saw a small group of people gathered around an old upright piano. An elderly man was playing, his eyes closed in concentration. After he finished, the small audience applauded warmly. He smiled and invited anyone else to play. For a moment, Sophia was frozen. Her hands felt clammy, her heart hammered against her ribs. It had been 10 years. Could she even remember how to play? Fear and longing warred within her. Then she thought of her father's proud smile, of the joy music once brought her. Taking a deep breath, she pushed the door open and walked in. The room fell silent as she approached the piano. All eyes were on her. She sat down, her fingers hesitating over the keys. They felt like strangers. She closed her eyes, took another breath, and began to play. It wasn't perfect. Her fingers were stiff, clumsy at first. She fumbled a note here and there. But then something clicked. Muscle memory, or maybe heart memory, took over. The melody started to flow, tentative at first, then gaining confidence. It was a piece she had composed herself, long ago, a song of hope and longing. The music poured out of her, carrying a decade of unspoken sadness, of quiet sacrifice, of buried dreams. It wasn't just notes, it was her story. When she played the final chord, the room was utterly silent. She opened her eyes, her vision blurry with tears. The small audience was looking at her, not just with admiration, but with a deep, knowing understanding. The elderly man who had played earlier walked over, his own eyes glistening. "My child," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "that was the most honest music I have ever heard. Welcome back." That night, Sophia didn't just play the piano. She found herself again. The fire was reignited, no longer a faint ember, but a growing flame, warm and bright. The journey back was not easy. Sophia started practicing again, renting a small keyboard for her apartment. She played every night after her long days at the office. Her fingers slowly regained their old agility. But more importantly, her soul rediscovered its voice. She started composing again, her new music infused with the wisdom and depth of her experiences. It wasn't about fame or concert halls anymore. It was about connection, about sharing her story, about the pure, unadulterated joy of creating something beautiful. She started playing at the community center regularly, her small audience growing each week. People came not just for the music, but for the feeling it gave them. They heard her resilience, her hope, her quiet strength in every note. One evening, her brother Leo, now a successful graphic designer, came to listen. As Sophia played, he saw not just his sister, but the vibrant, passionate girl from their childhood, the one who had sacrificed her dreams for his. After her performance, he hugged her tightly, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry, Sophia," he whispered. "I never knew." Sophia just smiled, a genuine, radiant smile. "There's nothing to be sorry for," she said. "It just took me a little while to find my way back to the music." Sophia's story reminds us that it's never too late to reignite a passion. Life might force us to take detours, to put our dreams on hold. But a true passion never really dies. It waits patiently, a silent melody in the background of our lives, waiting for the right moment to be played again. Sometimes, the most beautiful music comes from a heart that has known silence. It's a testament to the fact that our experiences, even the painful ones, add depth and richness to our song. Your dream might not look the same as it once did. It might be quieter, more personal, but it can be even more meaningful. So, if there's a dream you've packed away in a dusty box, maybe it's time to open it. Maybe it's time to listen for that quiet melody within you and let it play. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe for more content that we hope will inspire you. What's a dream you'd like to rediscover? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your story. Pain had been just a word to her teenage self. Loss was something that happened in movies. But now she knew what every single note of this piece meant. The longing, the heartbreak, the desperate hope that somehow, somewhere, beauty still existed in the world. Her fingers moved faster. The piece was building, growing more complex. Cascading runs of notes tumbled from her hands like water over rocks. Her right hand sang the melody while her left hand created a foundation of rich, deep chords. It was physically demanding, requiring her to stretch her hands across the keys in ways that made her muscles scream. But Sophia didn't care. She poured everything into it. Every dinner rush where she'd smiled through exhaustion. Every medical bill she'd opened with shaking hands. Every night she'd fallen asleep too tired to even cry. Every moment she'd walked past a music store and forced herself not to look. The restaurant had gone completely silent. Conversations died mid-sentence. A server carrying a tray of desserts stood frozen, forgetting where she was going. The bartender stopped pouring. Even the kitchen staff had emerged from the back, drawn by the sound of something extraordinary happening. At Thornton's table, the smirk had completely vanished from his face. He sat rigid, gripping the edge of the table like he needed something solid to hold on to. His face had gone pale. Whatever game he'd thought he was playing, whatever entertainment he'd expected, this wasn't it. This was something else entirely. Next to him, a woman in her 60s had tears streaming down her face, though she didn't seem to notice. She wasn't crying quietly either. These were the kind of tears that came from somewhere deep, the kind you couldn't control, even if you wanted to. Sophia's hands flew across the keys. The piece was reaching its first major climax, and she attacked it with everything she had. Massive chords crashed like waves. Her whole body moved with the music, swaying, leaning into the powerful sections, pulling back for the tender moments. She hit a particularly difficult passage, her fingers moving so fast they blurred. This was the part where she'd always struggled as a teenager, the part Dr. Vasquez had made her practice 100 times. Her 16-year-old hands had barely been able to manage it. But now, with adult strength and 15 years of survival behind her, she played it perfectly. The music softened, becoming almost fragile. This was the heart of the piece, the part that always felt like a memory of something beautiful that was lost forever. Sophia's touch became gentle, each note placed carefully, like she was handling something precious and breakable. A man in a business suit was crying now too, not even trying to hide it. His colleague next to him stared at Sophia like he was seeing a ghost. All around the room, phones had come out, but not in the usual rude way. People were recording, but they were doing it almost reverently, like they knew they were witnessing something they'd want to remember. In a corner booth that Sophia couldn't see, an elderly woman with silver hair sat completely still. Her coffee had gone cold in her hands. Her face showed shock, then confusion, then something like recognition. She leaned forward, squinting across the dim restaurant, trying to see the face of the woman at the piano. The music built again, growing more urgent, more passionate. This was the part that had always felt like hope fighting against impossible odds. Like someone refusing to give up, even when everything said they should. Sophia threw herself into it, her fingers attacking the keys with fierce determination. Sweat beaded on her forehead. Her arms were starting to ache. This piece was a workout even for concert pianists who played regularly. For someone who hadn't performed in 15 years, it should have been impossible. But Sophia had spent those years carrying heavy trays, working 12-hour shifts, staying on her feet until her body screamed. She was stronger than she'd ever been as a teenager. The piece climbed higher and higher, building toward its peak. Sophia's hands were everywhere at once, playing passages that seemed to require more than 10 fingers. The sound filled the room, swallowing everything else. It wasn't background music anymore. It was a force of nature. And then the final cascade. A waterfall of notes that tumbled down from the highest register to the lowest, Sophia's hands racing across the entire keyboard. It was showing off, technically, but it was also earned. This was the moment the piece demanded. The moment Sophia had been preparing for 15 years ago. She played the final massive chord, her hands spreading wide across the keys, and the sound rang out through the restaurant like a bell. Then another chord, then another, each one powerful and definitive, saying something that words couldn't express. And then silence. Sophia's hands hovered over the keys. Her chest heaved as she caught her breath. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence stretched out, heavy and complete. Then someone started clapping, and the entire restaurant exploded. The applause hit Sophia like a physical wave. People weren't just clapping. They were standing, shouting, some of them openly weeping. The sound was deafening in the usually quiet restaurant. She sat frozen at the piano bench, her hands still trembling, trying to understand what had just happened. A waiter she'd worked with for 2 years was staring at her with his mouth open. The hostess had her hands pressed to her face, tears running between her fingers. Even the head chef, a grumpy man who never smiled at anyone, was clapping slowly, his eyes red. Sophia turned to look at Thornton's table. The billionaire sat there like someone had punched him in the stomach. His face was pale, his earlier arrogance completely gone. He looked small somehow, despite his expensive suit and his table full of important people. The woman next to him was still crying, reaching for napkins to wipe her face. Sophia stood up from the piano bench on shaky legs. She felt exposed, raw, like she'd just shown everyone a part of herself she'd kept hidden for years. And she had. That's exactly what she'd done. She started walking back toward Thornton's table to resume her duties, but she barely made it 3 steps before someone caught her arm. It was the elderly woman from the corner booth, the one with silver hair. Up close, Sophia could see she was maybe 70, with kind eyes and an elegant way of dressing that spoke of old money, not new. "Sophia?" the woman said, her voice shaking. "Sophia Chun?" Sophia froze. Nobody here knew her last name. She was just Sophia the waitress to everyone at the Azure Club. "I'm sorry, do I know you? You don't remember me?" The woman's eyes filled with tears. "I know it's been a long time, but—" "Sophia, it's me, Dr. Vasquez." The world tilted. Sophia grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. Dr. Elena Vasquez, her teacher from the conservatory. The woman who'd believed in her, who'd told her parents she had a real future, who'd been preparing her for that final showcase. "Dr. Vasquez, I didn't know you ever came here. I come here sometimes for business dinners. But Sophia, where have you been? You just disappeared. You stopped coming to lessons, you didn't show up for your showcase, and when I tried to call, your phone was disconnected. I went to your apartment, but you'd moved. I looked for you for months." Sophia felt tears burning in her eyes. "I'm so sorry. My father died, and everything just fell apart. We lost everything. I had to drop out." Dr. Vasquez's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh, sweet girl. I had no idea." She pulled Sophia into a hug, and Sophia finally broke down. They stood there in the middle of the restaurant, crying together while everyone watched. Vincent, the manager, started to approach, but Dr. Vasquez held up one hand to stop him. "Do you have any idea?" Dr. Vasquez said loudly, her voice carrying across the room, "who this young woman is? She was the most talented student I've taught in 40 years at the Manhattan Conservatory. She was headed for Juilliard, for concert halls around the world, and she's been here serving tables?" Vincent looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I didn't know. She's just been a server here for 2 years. Dr. Vasquez snapped back, because she probably thought nobody would care. That's what this world does to people with real talent who don't have money or connections. It grinds them down until they forget who they are. Thornton finally stood up from his table, genuinely shaken. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "I was showing off, being an idiot. I'm sorry, truly." Sophia looked at him, her anger mixed with exhaustion. "You wanted a performance. You got one. The money's still on your table. Take it back." "I don't want it." Her voice was firm. "You don't get to buy your way out of this. You treated me like I was nothing. The music wasn't for you. It was for me." Thornton nodded slowly and sat back down. Dr. Vasquez squeezed Sophia's hand. "Come sit with me for a few minutes. Vincent, surely Sophia can take a short break?" Vincent, still looking uncomfortable, nodded quickly. "Of course. Take all the time you need." They sat in a corner booth, and Sophia told her everything. Her father's death, the medical bills, her mother's illness, dropping out, and the years of just surviving. "I looked for you everywhere," Dr. Vasquez said softly. "I even set up a scholarship fund in your name." Sophia laughed bitterly. "A scholarship fund? I needed that 15 years ago. Now I'm just a waitress who used to play piano." "No." Dr. Vasquez's voice was sharp. "You're a musician who happens to work as a waitress. What you just played. Sophia, you have something now that you didn't have as a teenager. You have depth, experience, pain. That's what makes music mean something." Just then, Sophia's phone buzzed repeatedly. She pulled it out to see texts and social media notifications from numbers she didn't recognize. Confused, she opened one. Someone had recorded her performance and posted it online. It was everywhere. The video had hundreds of thousands of views in under an hour. Comments flooded in. "Who is this woman? This is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." Sophia stared at the screen, her hands shaking. Dr. Vasquez leaned over, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Well," she said, "I think the world just found you." The next 48 hours were insane. The video exploded, reaching 30 million views by Sunday. News outlets picked up the story, and Sophia's tiny apartment became a fortress, besieged by reporters, record labels, and producers. But the call that mattered came on Monday morning from Dr. Vasquez. I need you to come to my office today. 2 o'clock? And Sophia? Wear something nice. Sophia walked into Dr. Vasquez's familiar office at the conservatory. But Dr. Vasquez wasn't alone. 3 other people sat there, one of whom Sophia recognized immediately, Catherine Wu, the director of the Lincoln Center. The other 2 were from a foundation Sophia had never heard of. Sit down, please, Dr. Vasquez said gently. These people have a proposition for you. Catherine Wu spoke first. Ms. Chun, I've been in this business for 30 years. I've heard thousands of pianists. What you did in that video, that was special. That was real. And I want to offer you a showcase at Lincoln Center. A full solo performance. 3 months from now. Sophia's heart stopped. Lincoln Center? I can't. I work full-time. My mother's medical bills. Which brings us to why we're all here. One of the foundation representatives interrupted. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes. Ms. Chun, Dr. Vasquez established a scholarship fund years ago for promising musicians who face financial hardship. She set it up in your name, actually, hoping you'd return someday. The fund has grown significantly. We'd like to offer you a position. A position? Teaching, Dr. Vasquez explained. Working with young students from backgrounds similar to yours. Kids who have talent, but no resources. You'd teach part-time while also completing your own training. We'd cover everything. Your tuition, your mother's medical care, living expenses. Everything. Sophia couldn't breathe. I don't understand. Why would you do this? Because you represent something important, the other foundation representative said. He was older, maybe 65, with gray hair and glasses. You represent every kid who had to give up their dreams to survive. Every talented person who got buried under circumstances beyond their control. Your story matters, Sophia. But more than that, what you can teach these kids matters. You understand struggle in a way most music teachers never will. But I haven't played seriously in 15 years. I'm not qualified to. You played Rachmaninoff's second piano concerto after 15 years away from music, Catherine Wu said. You played it better than most professionals. If that doesn't qualify you, I don't know what does. Sophia looked at Dr. Vasquez, who was smiling with tears in her eyes. I told you, the older woman said, that life isn't over. It's just beginning. The weeks that followed were a blur. Sophia gave notice at the Azure Club. Vincent shook her hand and told her he'd always known she was special, which was a lie, but she appreciated it anyway. Her coworkers threw her a party in the back room, and even the grumpy head chef made her favorite dessert. She started teaching 3 days a week. Her students were kids from the Bronx, from Queens, from Brooklyn. Kids who rode the subway for an hour to get to lessons. Kids whose parents worked 2 jobs. Kids who reminded her exactly of herself at that age. The first time one of her students, a 12-year-old named Tommy from the Lower East Side, played something beautiful, Sophia cried. His mother worked as a home health aide and could barely afford his lessons even with the scholarship. But the kid had magic in his fingers. You're really good, Sophia told him after class. My mom says I should be practical. Learn something that makes money. Sophia knelt down to his eye level. Want to know a secret? I thought the same thing. I gave up music for 15 years because I thought being practical was more important. And you know what? I was wrong. The world needs practical things, sure. But it also needs beauty. It needs people who can make others feel something real. Don't give up on this, okay? The kid nodded, his eyes serious. Did you really work as a waitress? I did. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I was pretending to be someone I wasn't. Don't make my mistake. Don't wait 15 years to be yourself. Her own training started again, too. Dr. Vasquez worked with her personally, 3 times a week. Her hands had to relearn their strength, their endurance. Some days were frustrating. She'd hit walls she'd never encountered as a teenager. But other days, she'd play something and understand it in a way she never could have at 16. "You're better now than you ever were," Dr. Vasquez told her one afternoon. "You know why? Because you've lived. Music isn't about perfect technique. It's about having something to say." 3 months went by faster than Sophia thought possible. Her mother's health improved with better medical care. She moved them to a nicer apartment, nothing fancy, but clean and safe with enough space for a real piano. Her mother cried the day it was delivered. "Your father would be so proud," she whispered, touching the keys gently. "I know, Mom. I think about him every time I play." The night of the Lincoln Center performance arrived. Sophia stood backstage in a simple black dress, her hands shaking just like they had that night at the Azure Club. But this time was different. This time she wasn't being pressured or humiliated. This time she was choosing to be here. Dr. Vasquez appeared beside her. Nervous? Terrified? Good. That means you care. The older woman squeezed her hand. "Remember what you told your student Tommy. Don't wait to be yourself. You've already waited long enough." Sophia walked onto the stage. The hall was packed. 2,000 people, all there to hear her play. She could see her mother in the front row, flanked by her students. Tommy gave her an enthusiastic wave. And in the back, sitting quietly, was Richard Thornton. He'd sent a massive anonymous donation to the foundation. Dr. Vasquez had told her about it, though he tried to keep it secret. Sophia had been angry at first, but Dr. Vasquez had talked her down. "Let him do something good with his guilt," she'd said. "You don't have to forgive him. But his money will help a lot of kids." Sophia sat at the piano. The same Rachmaninoff piece waited for her, the piece that had changed everything. But this time, she wasn't playing it from a place of anger or pain. She was playing it from a place of hope. She began, and the music filled the hall like light filling darkness. When she finished, the standing ovation lasted 6 minutes. But the moment Sophia would remember forever came after, when Tommy ran up to her with his program clutched in his hands. "That was amazing. When I grow up, I want to play just like you." Sophia knelt down and looked him in the eyes. "Then practice hard and never give up. But Tommy, you don't want to play like me. You want to play like you. The world already has one Sophia Chun. It needs a Tommy Rodriguez." The kid grinned and ran back to his mother. Sophia stood there in the emptying hall, looking at the piano that had just given her life back. Her father had been right all those years ago. Music was freedom. Nobody could take away what you could create. It had just taken her 15 years to remember.